So when I used to date, when I'd be in romantic partnerships and relationships, I always knew that I was a very sensitive and emotional woman. So my process on when emotions would come up would be I would process things prior to speaking about them. Emotions are not facts. And only some of the guys I was with heard me when I said that I can't talk about, just give me some time to process this, then I will express myself. Because I always wanted to make sure that what I was feeling was validated, or why these emotions came up. Were they a trigger? Was it just an initial reaction without actually holding validation? Hi, I am Holly, and I'm sharing a part of my journey to bring courage and inspire you on yours. And emotions are not facts. The truth is that our heart, it can really get us in trouble. It can be a strength and a weakness. And so when we get in these situations where we are challenged, whether by somebody else or whether by a circumstance in our life, you get to choose your reaction. And this is how shifting your mindset can really help you. And when you've done that deep inner work, when you've healed your traumas and you're no longer initially triggered, and you're able to process facts on these circumstances which happen and how to get yourself out of it. So a few days ago, I was tested. I've been through a lot. If you've been following me for a year or so ago when I started this channel, it was a part of my healing journey, and it was a part of expressing myself and being able to give back to people who really they don't know if they've been through these, if they're the only ones who have been through these things. Maybe you're looking for strength on how to use your voice in order to express your boundaries, your values. And so I started mainly just as a part of my healing journey. I was never allowed to speak. I was never allowed to express myself. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to feel how I felt. My emotions were never validated, even though I took time to process situations. Like, for instance, this guy that I was seeing, we probably, at that time, probably at least 5 to 6 months, someone messaged me and said it was his girlfriend. And again, I take everything at face value. I process things. I really want to get down to the facts. So I asked her, I said, please don't message me again. And then the guy I was seeing was in the store at the time. And so he comes out of the store and he looked at me and he knew something was up. And I said to him, I was like, because he says, what's going on? I said, nothing, let's just go back to the house. I was staying at my friend's at the time. He had just driven 12 hours to come and see me. And so we get back to her house and I'm processing this in my mind. And I was like, I don't overreact. I really want to, okay, could this be true? And then she messaged me again and she said, he told me that you were just a friend from Ontario and that you guys just talked. And they lived together for 5 years and they shared a phone bill together. And so that's how she knew that we were talking so much, because she sees his phone activity and she sees my number pop up all the time. So now her story is being validated through her words, and she's not blowing up, she's not overreacting, so I'm accepting the text words. We didn't speak on the phone. And then so now I knew that there could be some legitimate truth in her story. Because then she says, "Can you just tell me if he's there with you? If so, I'm going to pack my stuff and I will be gone by the time he gets home." I said, "Yes, we worked on the same job site together." I said, "We've been hanging out for 5 to 6 months and he never told me about you, and he worked away, so he was gone like 75 days at a time sometimes and rarely ever went home. So I assumed I was none the wiser, like really. He went home occasionally." And I said to her, "He's here with me in Lloydminster." And she said, "I really appreciate you telling me that." And I said, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry that he did that to you." And she just thanked me for being honest. So now I have to speak to the guy who moved me 12 hours away, who I worked on the job site with him. We were building a plant expansion for a coal mine. So I was working with the iron welders and the iron workers and the welders. And he had just driven 12 hours to come visit me. Rather than going home to his girlfriend, he drove 12 hours to his side bitch, because I was clearly not the first or the only. And so I'm calm. I've processed this over probably, half hour to 45 minutes or so after me and her chatting a bit. And I said, "So, blah, 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 messaged me." He's like, "Oh, what'd she have to say?" I said, "Well, she said that you guys have been dating for 5 years and that you live together, and she saw you share a phone bill, so she saw our activity and he's like, "Well, yeah, I was going to tell you about that." I said, "Well, she told me that she's going to be packed up and gone by the time you get home. So I think you need to leave." And that's how I've always handled conflict, frustration, confusion, chaos that other people bring to me, is by being calm. I don't bring the drama. So then I dated this guy, was it 5 years ago now? And we had known each other for 3 years. And then he told me that he left his wife. And then he basically jumped in with me right away, because he told me the relationship had been over for a few years and that it just... The same story I've gotten from I can't tell you how many guys. "Oh, it hasn't been a relationship for a few years," or it's, "we've just made it work for the kids, but we've been separated for so long." I've got that story, I can't tell you how many times. I can't believe that I kept believing it from different guys. And I wouldn't say I'm naive. I would say that I was really genuinely looking for that partner who I could reciprocate with in how I really wanted to be treated. I always gave that to others. And so this guy, he didn't like the fact that I processed my emotions and my thoughts prior to speaking about it. I said, just 20 minutes. Just let me process this before we speak a bit. And he would try to start arguments just so that I would express myself, because he couldn't handle the silence. And he couldn't respect my boundary that I needed that space in order to process so that I wouldn't overreact. I don't overreact because I've always had very good self-control. And so he started bringing out a side of me that I don't want to see. I wasn't allowed to process. I had to fight. I needed to conflict with him. And then he ends up breaking up with me because I went on a trip, which he was already planning on going on a trip without me. So I don't know what the difference was. And he was one of those guys. I said to him at once, I was like, you're a really good actor. And he's like, no, I'm not acting. I was like, you're a good actor. He didn't like the fact that I knew that everything always fell into place for me. He didn't like the fact that I was confident in who I was. He didn't like the fact that he had seen some of my obstacles in my investments and how I made everything work. Everything always fell into place and happened exactly how it was supposed to, and I never got stressed out because I accepted what was, and I was always forward focused. Emotions are not fact. And so here's what ends up happening when we have these situations happen to us. We were traveling to see a friend, and we had been at my friend's house for about three days or 3 nights, something like that. So anyways, we're about 5-hour drive. And we traveled, we visited, and we started traveling home, and we were probably about an hour into our drive. And all of a sudden, my truck makes this like loud pop noise and sounds like boom, 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 like as if my tire popped or the rubber flung off, and I was like on a broken wheel now. But the truck wasn't going like this. It was just making this really loud noise. And it was loud. Like, it was so loud. We were basically in the middle of nowhere. Now, here's what happens when you surrender to the unknown and you trust and you have faith. If we had have been 5 minutes before or 5 minutes ahead, we would have been screwed because there was nothing there. We literally broke down in front of a resort. And this is when you have to trust that God has you covered, that your inner guidance system puts you in a position where you can get yourself out of it. And so after everything that's happened to me the past 10 years, and all of the attacks against me and all of the challenges that I've had to push through myself, where I've had a few good people come into my life along the way, which were placed there so that I could have a bit of assistance and make it through. And you get to a point where you really don't want any more challenges. You're tired, you're fed up, and you're just like, can we please just move forward? So my truck breaks down. And I feel the emotions building up inside me. Because I'm just done. I can't believe the amount of things that have happened to me and I'm still here. And so I say to my son, we have to go for a walk into this resort, and we're going to have to find somebody to help us, because I don't know if we can travel in our truck anymore. Bald eagle. Strength and courage. And so as we're walking down, I maintained my composure, because I'm always like, okay, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to get through this? What's going to happen next is supposed to happen. Whatever happens, happens for good. And I truly believe that, and I stand by it. And so I know, like, if I'm not meant to keep this truck, then I guess we're going back to my friends. And so we go to the office, and there's a lady that just starts walking towards the office, and I tell her that I broke down at her exit and that I don't know what's wrong with it. Now, mind you, this is a Wednesday? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember now. I believe it was Wednesday. And she's like, oh, it's off season, so let me see if anyone's in the park. And so she gets a hold of this one guy, and he comes down to meet me there. Well, as soon as we walked out the doors, I started bawling my eyes out. I was like, the emotions just, I was like, what now? Kind of thing. And the emotions, I was trying to compose myself, and at the same time, I'm like, you know what? These emotions are a release. We cry to release the tension within us. So I never try and stop myself from crying. You've seen me in the videos. I've cried in I don't know how many of my videos. It's a release of tension, stress, dopamine buildup, like cortisol buildup, our stressors, our stress hormones, which really can overtake us. And so I was crying. The guy just pulls up in his truck. These two ladies pull up in a golf cart. Or no, sorry, the two ladies first, they pulled up in because they had just gotten back to the resort, and they pulled up in their SUV, and I said, well, John's going to help me here. We're going to see what's going on. But I said, it's been one thing after another, and I'm tired. I'm not alone, because I have my spiritual team. And I never feel lonely like I need somebody. It's just extremely exhausting being the only one who provides for your family, who takes care of you, with those who have known you for so long attacking you, even though you've only done good for them. So to feel everything I've felt in the past 10 years, and the amount of healing that I've done, and the amount of deep inner work that I've done, I know that when things like this happen, it's because there's a big release happening. And there's huge shifts energetically right now. And so I start to shift my focus. And this is what happens when you get into a challenging situation. You create trauma in your life by holding on to the fictional portion of what's happening to you. So what you need to do is you focus on the facts. And so rather than focusing on oh my God, did I just lose my truck? Did I Does this have to go into a salvage yard? What's going to happen here? Are we even going to get home? Do I have to go back? Is my garden going to dry out because I haven't gotten back to water it? There's all these what ifs that we add to our situation. And this is how we create trauma. So in my years of work on myself, I've really learned how to not add trauma to my life. As I don't sit in it and dwell in it like many people do. And so this is where I have a bit of an advantage already. But knowing how we create trauma in our lives, I better easily navigate through these challenging situations. So what I end up doing is I look at the facts. I look at the fact that we stopped in a really extremely great spot. And the resort was open. It's not the middle of winter. The weather's fine. We can walk in. I look at the fact that my truck still runs. It's just really noisy. I look at the fact that there's a maintenance guy here now. I look at the fact that he's got somebody to call. I can call my mechanic. We can try and figure out what it is. And so he listens to the truck. I said it runs, like I can start it up. It's just noisy. So he's like, okay, start it up. He started it up. He's like, turn it off. So then he calls his guy, gets a hold of him, plays the noise for him. And he's like, it sounds like the lifters in the engine. And I'm like, that doesn't sound good. Like, can we fix it? Or do we need a new motor? And he's like, that's like $5,000 to $6,000. And I was like, okay, well, I'll call my buddy and tell him to come pick it up and he can have it. Because I am not paying $5,000 for a truck that is not even worth that. And then so I was preparing to scrap it. And then I was preparing to, as soon as I could get a hold of my guy, for him to just bring us back with him and all of our stuff can just remain in the truck because he'd be bringing it back home. And, oh my gosh. Finally, don't I get a hold of my buddy? We go to the ladies' trailer. They set up a movie for my son. And then I tell them, well, I'm going to go back to the truck because I had to get my dog out. I couldn't just leave him in there. So as I'm going to the truck, I start crying again. Because I need to release this tension and this buildup that I have within me. I can't hold this in. This is like, okay. A little bit of grieving, a little bit of preparing. Release it now. Don't hold on to it forever. It is what it is, right? I'm in a place of acceptance. So don't I get to the truck and the guy's back. John's back at the truck. And then he's like, I wonder if it's the exhaust. And I was like, I don't know. It sounded like a belt. Like it sounded like a belt snapped or a hose popped or something. I said, but the belt, the belt's fine. The tires are fine. There's nothing underneath indicating that anything major. So it has to be like an internal thing. And I only know so much about them. That's why I pay mechanics. And finally my buddy calls me back. And he listened to it. He's like, I know exactly what it is. He's like, you can drive it. And I was like I can make it home? Like I have another home. It took us about 6 more hours to get home. He's like, oh yeah, you can drive it. And then so he's like, he got he got John to do a little test thing with a stick and a paper towel. And it was flapping, and he's like, there's a leak. So what happened is where the exhaust manifold meets it, it popped. And he thinks that the people I bought it from, who didn't tell me this, they had already done a very, very MacGyver cheap repair with JB Weld. And I just repopped the hole where the JB Weld was, and now it's leaking exhaust, which means, travel with the windows open, get back, repatch it. And at this point, I had prepared to scrap it. And I was like, well, we'll figure it out. We'll make it home. Whether we go back to my friend's house, she can pick us up. The issue that many people deal with when they get into these types of situations is the creating stories that aren't actually there. If we just learn to be in the moment, and this is what a lot of people speak about, they just don't go into full detail so that you know how to be there. Look at the facts. What happened? Well, it sounded like something popped. There was actually a large piece of rubber on the highway, which I ended up running over also at the same time. I broke down in front of a resort. There was a guy there to help me, got a hold of my mechanic, and we got to drive home. All the facts. I wasn't in turmoil, nobody was hurt, everything was fine, we were off the highway. So remember, be in the moment. Focus and observe and release if you need to. Through crying or screaming. You can scream into the woods. Primal therapy is great. Don't let that sit and fester. Release it. See the facts and breathe. Life is beauty-filled, and we are each here to experience it in our own way. So make it a little easier for yourself. Don't bring this drama and the stress with you. Mwah. Bliss to each and every one of you.